Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our discussions and our discoveries with respect to those films which can be found in this wonderful set, which is called Pioneers of African American Cinema. And we have been discussing this great set. This happens to be the Kino Classics Blu-ray set, 5 discs Blu-ray set that was released some years back. And we are now at the 5th and final disc, those films that are included on such disc. And specifically, I'd like to focus our attention today, if I may, on a work from that wonderful filmmaker and artist Spencer Williams, this time from 1946, starring Francine Everette, and the name of the work is Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. And my goodness, what another rich, rewarding, entertaining, complex work from the one, the only, the great Spencer Williams. We have Gertie LaRue, the Dirty Gertie of the title, arriving from Harlem to this Caribbean island where she is going to be performing in terms of her, she's coming from a nightclub performing background, and so now she is in this new area, and the plan is that she will be here to perform for purposes of this community. And along the way, she meets a number of people because she's a very charismatic, charming character, and a lot of people are attracted to her. But we also see a certain degree of resistance from some of the characters that we also meet along the way with respect to what it is that she represents to them, and also the type of threat, perceived threat, that she seems to be engendering among certain people in this community. And also we get a sense of a certain level of intrigue into Gertie LaRue's background, and perhaps some of that background intrigue along the way of the revelations of the plot, perhaps some of those details come back to haunt her. And so this is, I think, overall a very complex, as I say, complex and entertaining film, once again, from the one and only great Spencer Williams, this Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. And so I think here we have a number of things that we can touch upon in terms of a discussion of this work. And I think first and foremost, we can say that this is, again, a film that is focusing in on this very charismatic character, Gertie LaRue, the Francine Everette character. And what I really admire about this work and how it presents this character is that she is undoubtedly a very charming and charismatic figure. We see that not just in terms of the context of the plot, how various characters in this Caribbean island community react to her and respond to her. For instance, some of the encounters that she has with some of the men in this community attest to this. She has a certain allure and charm that is undeniable, again, in the context of the plot and character relationships. So there's that going for her. But also there is a real sense of grace and presence, a real cinematic presence in the form of this particular performance from Francine Everette. And so it is a really great, commanding performance. And everything revolves around her, and people react to her, and we as viewers also respond to her when she's on the screen, which I find very compelling. And there's also levels of intrigue to her background and her story. There's a type of foreground aspect to her story, as well as a background aspect to her story, and that leads to a further sense of curiosity on the part of the viewer, on the part of me as I watch it. And so that makes it more, all the more compelling and all the more alluring as an entertaining viewing experience. Also, along those lines, what I really admire is that I love how this film is not afraid to present the character of Gertie LaRue in a way that doesn't shy away from showing us some of her, say, character faults or some of those fallibilities of Gertie as a person, so to speak. I mean, we see her interacting. Sometimes we see certain aspects that might be said to be somewhat maybe showing a slightly less than positive light with respect to that particular character. But I find that those presentations to be all the more compelling in terms of an engagement with this character, because no one is perfect, right? And so a person has certain strengths, also has certain, say, maybe certain aspects about his or her character that might be considered quote unquote weaknesses. But I think showing both sides, showing the complexity, showing the totalness of the human character that is Gertie LaRue, I think is the great strength of this film. And all the way, even though we might see or we might interpret some of her actions to be somewhat maybe less than quote unquote noble, shall we say, there are ultimately and overall there is a real compelling aspect to the character Gertie LaRue, and that I think draws us in even further. So I really appreciate that type of viewpoint and that type of perspective that the film has on this particular character, and really makes the story that she's involved with, a number of sub-stories, subplots, makes it all the more compelling. And that's also due to, as I say, the great performance by Francine Everette, who gives us this multifaceted, multidimensional look into this, I think, very complex character who is Gertie LaRue. So this is a great strength of this. Also, we have to keep in mind, too, the context of this film as in the from the viewpoint or from the great scholarship of people like Jacqueline Njuma Stewart in her great essay, for instance, which is included in the particular booklet called Race Movies: A Patchwork History. She does, Jacqueline Njuma Stewart, she does provide, I think, some really great context as to how this film can also be seen as an example or within the context of what might be called race cinema, or a film that is included in the set, which is called Pioneers of African American Cinema. So, for example, on page 32 of this Kino Classics booklet, around the middle, the second full paragraph, Jacqueline Njuma Stewart says, and I quote, "The glamorous but tragic quote-unquote bad girl figure, Gertie LaRue, in Spencer Williams' Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA, a loose remake of Rain featuring Joan Crawford. Gertie cannot stand apart from the vexed issues of physical abuse and sexual exploitation of black women that date back to slavery and shape black women's experiences within their own families and communities. Nor can Gertie exist outside of the discourses on quote-unquote respectability, tenets that were preached by elite and middle-class black activists to police what they found to be unseemly black behaviors in the name of demonstrating the moral readiness of the race to assume full U.S. citizenship. The efforts to display and control Gertie's body and sexuality that we see in the film take on particularly charged meanings in an African-American context." End quote. And so this is a very fascinating viewpoint, quite nuanced. And what Jacqueline Njuma Stewart is, I understand, doing here is she's placing this film in the context of race cinema, in the context of also race cinema and gender dynamics. And so this, I think, is a really key detail or a key perspective, because again, Gertie LaRue is the heart and soul of this film, and everything about the film is essentially how people respond to her, or how people try to resist her, or how people try to stop her. And so this is, I think, a really great set of points from Jacqueline Njuma Stewart, again, placing it in the context of race cinema and gender dynamics. And also, I should point out, too, this second point that she raises about quote-unquote respectability. This is, in a really interesting way, maybe focusing in, as an example, the sort of the way in which sort of a preacher-like character seems to be relying on or perhaps abusing the aspect of religion in the film in a way to try to justify one's anger or resistance against Gertie LaRue, or what she seems to be representing to this particular character. In other words, it seems to be a slightly less than positive take on a religious character, which is a really, I think, fascinating turn when one considers, say, the previous film that we discussed from Spencer Williams, which is The Blood of Jesus. And we have the handling of, say, religion in the context of those particular characters in that film versus, say, the handling of religion in the context of a particular character in this film, Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. And there's a particular moment in the film where prayer is there's a scene of prayer, which is quite an involved scene, and it really shows the way in which maybe religion is either viewed or maybe misviewed in the context of a particular character, and how that affects Gertie's presence, or how Gertie's presence affects this particular person, etc. So I find that maybe twist of this type of treatment, maybe vis-a-vis a comparison with an earlier work from Spencer Williams, to be really another compelling aspect that makes Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA just fascinating viewing, again, in the context not just of the film itself, but also in Spencer Williams' filmography writ large. Speaking of Spencer Williams, too, we have a wonderful appearance of Spencer Williams here, and in one of the supplements that's found on the disc, where Jacqueline and Juma Stewart speaks about Spencer Williams' work and also speaks about her great fondness for this film, Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA, excuse me. She mentions, Jacqueline and Juma Stewart does, about how this is another great example of the real versatility of Spencer Williams as an artist. I mean, he had so many talents, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. And he's very famous for a number of roles that he himself had. And now we see in, say, previous films and in this film, we see some of the great, wonderful physicality in terms of his acting. There's a comedic touch to this particular role. And what I really love how there's emphasis placed on the almost Renaissance artist aspect of Spencer Williams. So what a great artist he is, really is. And I think this set and the inclusion of many or a number of Spencer Williams works, including this particular work, I think is doing some really great service in terms of cinema watching and cinema appreciation, in terms of putting a well-deserved spotlight on the cinema of Spencer Williams. And again, in the context of this film, Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA, we get to see the full-on genius of Spencer Williams, and the complexity, the drama, the comedy, the treatment of themes, the way that things are complex, and the camera does not shy away from that sense of nuanced complexity. The human condition is, after all, a complex thing indeed, and so we get that on full display, and wonderful display here, and lovingly portrayed in Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. So this is a kind of great example. And also I should point out too, Jacqueline Juma Stewart's wonderful explanation here, or context, about how this film could also be seen in a way to be a type of way in which, in the context of race cinema, we have a story that seems to be mirroring a type of Hollywood mode of filmmaking. And I think that's a really valid point to make. At the same time, the point is also made that while this type of Hollywood mode of filmmaking seems to be maybe mirrored in the context of this production, at the same time, there are undeniably aspects of race cinema and gender dynamics and Spencer Williams' filmography, etc., that are inherent to a film like Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. So it has a sense of a Hollywood filmmaking storytelling parallel, while at the same time holding true to the integrity of the work of Spencer Williams as an artist, as also an example, and also the film as an example of race cinema that we see. Plus, also, in terms of its sort of importance and also the level of entertainment and dramatic value that it undoubtedly has. So this is my maybe long-winded way of trying to emphasize just how complex, richly complex, wonderfully complex this work is, Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. And it looks great, the picture quality is wonderful, and the sound quality is great. And so this is yet another example of the richness of the genius that is the filmmaking and artistic spirit of Spencer Williams. What a wonderful film to have. And if you have not seen this film, Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA, I strongly recommend it. I strongly recommend this and the other works of Spencer Williams. And also watch the talk by Jacqueline and Juma Stewart about the films of Spencer Williams, again, which is one of the supplements on disc 5 of the Blu-ray set, and also read the essays that are included in the booklet. It's just a great thing indeed. And as I say, this set is so wonderful for so many reasons. It is casting a spotlight on many artists of cinema, many beautiful voices of cinema. One of such voice is Spencer Williams. Spencer Williams, Spencer Williams. This is a great filmmaker and artist. And so the more his films are watched and discussed, I think the better. So hopefully, if you have the opportunity, please check out Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.